Right. Good afternoon, colleagues, and a warm welcome to you all that made time available in their busy schedules to attend the SACRA first quarter meeting of 2012. I see the attendees still streaming in. Just a note that this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available at a later stage, but probably within 24 hours. Just before we start with the webinar, I would like to thank BioCare for sponsoring the meeting and its platform, GoToMeetings or GoToWebinar. Hopefully the IT issues will be very kind on us and there won't be any delays passing on the presenting functionality within the platform. But thank you very much, BioCare. Without your support, this webinar would not have been possible. The agenda for today, and there is the first issue already. There we go. Should be showing on your screen. The theme of today's webinar is driving South Africa's vision for medicine development and lessons from the pandemic. With this webinar, we aim to deliberate with you all in the vision for clinical trials in South Africa, and SACRA is ready to lead and be the conduit that facilitates engagement with all the stakeholders in a collaborative mission to drive the vision for clinical trials in South Africa. So following our chair lady's video on LinkedIn, I trust you all joined and prepared with ideas and positive intents. So let's build together what we can produce in the future. The agenda initially posted on LinkedIn has been scrambled a little bit due to availability of the SACRA executive team, but I will run through the proceedings with you now. We will start with the presentations by SACRA, and that will be followed by an engagement with you all where you can share challenges, experiences, and achievements during the pandemic. Of course, this will be the opportunity as well to immediately ask questions to the SACRA executive team. Then Vicky, the SACRA chair, and EXCO will take the opportunity to present the new EXCO, a proposed constitutional change, and also the operational plan and strategy for 2021 and beyond. Tini will further present a session on the purpose for SACRA, which will be followed immediately by Rapala facilitating a discussion around this purpose to refine the country's vision for clinical trials and more importantly on how that vision can be realized. So that is most important session and will be quite interactive, and hopefully we will have everybody's input in that discussion. Then lastly, before the close of the meeting and final remarks, Vicky will further present a short industry report for SACRA, an export permit update, which is mostly considered the hot potato, and finally some stakeholder survey outcomes. Then upfront, some housekeeping to consider. Each attendee will be muted by default, so if you have any questions during presentation, please write them in the chat box, and the panelist will collate these questions, and these questions will be addressed immediately after the presentation or during the interactive sessions. If your questions cannot be addressed within this webinar, we will answer or at least attempt to get these questions answered in writing after the meeting. As I already mentioned, the recording will be made available to everybody within the 24 hours and even can be shared with some stakeholders that could not attend this webinar. But without further ado, let's jump to the proceedings. And I'm honored here to be able to introduce to you the SACRA executive team, Dr. Boitumelo Semete, CEO, Ms. Portia Nkombule, the CRO, and Ms. Christelna Reinecke, the COO. Before I pass on the presentation, I would like to shortly introduce Dr. Boitumelo Semete. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Health Products Regulator. She has a PhD in biochemistry and also holds a Master's in Science in Management, Finance and Investment. She is also a Fellow of the African Leadership Initiative, which the technology innovation space, and she managed a biotechnology incubator at the Innovation Hub Management Company. She was with McKinsey & Company for 2 years as a McKinsey Leadership Fellow, and prior to that, she was at the CSIR as Senior Researcher. Then I will hand the stage to the SACRA Executive Committee, starting with Dr. Boitumelo. After that, I will hand over to Ms. Portia Nakumbele, also presenting a short biosketch, and also Ms. Kristelna Reinecke after that.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if you can see my screen.
I'm going to share it now. Let me just find you in the list of participants.
Oh, we can see her screen, Geben, or maybe you can turn off your webcam. If maybe Dr. Semete is comfortable, can also turn on her webcam.
Absolutely. I'll do so.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but I'd rather have you see my slides. You at least see my slides.
Yes, we can see
your
your
slides
slide.
are larger, and then your video is small. So all good.
Okay, great. No, thank you so much, and thanks to the SACRA executive for inviting us. We do really feel quite special that you've got, you know, a whole hour with SACRA, and I trust that it will be fruitful. The last time we engaged with yourselves, we had a very fruitful discussions. So I won't be long. I'm going to share a few slides, and then I'll hand over to my colleague, Ms. Portia Nakumbele, who is our CRO. But just at a high level, I thought I would just share, you know, this transformation journey that we're on as a regulator. A number of you may be aware that we were established about 3 years ago, you know, from the previous Medicines Control Council. We're now the South African Health Product Regulatory Authority. We've been able to, you know, corporatize the entity as a public entity that is accountable to the Minister of Health through a board that was also established around 2018 or so. We also, you know, as a Schedule 3 public entity, we've implemented the requirements as per our Public Finance Management Act, and we have to comply, obviously, with all of those requirements. But also quite important is around our mandate, which has been expanded, that now includes medical devices and IVDs, as well as complementary medicine and the area of radiation control, which in essence falls under medical devices and IVDs. We've re-engineered a number of our processes to ensure that we clear, you know, the backlog in medicine registrations, and we are implementing these processes in our business as usual. Very important also is that we're building internal capabilities. So those of you who've dealt with the MCC before, you noted its heavy reliance on the external evaluators and the committee members. And so the intention with SACRA is that this capability is then built internally within SACRA. So we're working hard towards doing that so that we adequately equip the organization for you know, the amount of work that we expect to come into the regulator. And again, we are on a process of strategically positioning ourselves as a world-class regulator that is aligned with global best practices, but is agile and is responsive to local needs. There's 3 elements that we want to focus on as we you know, aim to be an effective regulator, and I thought I'll share these with you. The 3 key elements is that we want to be an enabler of accelerated access to medicine, and accelerated, not necessarily expedited, but accelerated in the context of where we come from. You know, a number of you are aware that, you know, when we were the MCC, we took a number of years, sometimes 8 years or so, to have products registered. We want to significantly shorten that time. We've already seen in some instances that we have done that. But also it's not just about the time to register medicines, it's also about the time to authorize clinical trials, etc. And so we're really looking to improve our processes. We also want to be an enabler of innovative product development. And again, this is where this community comes in, because when these products are being developed, you know, they would need to go through clinical evaluation. So again, we're looking to strengthen and deepen our capacity in those areas. And again, we want to be an enabler of the growth of the sector. We understand the importance of the sector. You know, it's been acute now, even with COVID, the role that we need to play as a regulator. And so at the core of it all is that we want to be an enabler as a regulator and not a barrier. We want to, you know, and the mechanisms that we will be putting in place to do that is around digitizing a lot of our operations. We've got a clear 5-year-long plan to digitize our operations. We want to communicate very clear KPIs and targets, because also for yourselves as the sector, this is important for you to know what to expect from the regulator. Also around universal health coverage, we need to support that as a regulator, and we'll be working quite closely with the NHI around those efforts. And again, we want to partner with you know, stakeholders, and hence we've been so available for the engagements that we have with our stakeholders. I think this is the second time, at least in my tenure, that I'm engaging with SACRA, and I'm really quite happy that we are able to. There's still some areas that we haven't resolved yet, but you know, I think we're making, at least we're having discussions about that, and we're being accessible. And again, we want to support and align you know, ourselves with the various South African policies. From being an enabler of innovative product access to products that are developed locally, we want to position ourselves as a thought leader in the sector. We want to ensure that you know, we're a trusted partner of information. When we work with an extensive network of experts in various areas that we regulate, and so we will be partnering with them and leveraging on the skill sets that they have to ensure that we you know, provide trusted information to the public. Again, from an internal perspective, we are starting to create a culture of innovation. We want to align with global best practices. We want to be an agile African regulator. And also we want to improve our internal processes so that we are able to realize this objective of wanting to be an enabler. Lastly, I just want to share some learnings, you know, in terms of what we experienced when we were dealing with COVID. And it really made us reflect on how we're going to do things differently. Some of you may have seen an opinion piece that I published last week, just reflecting on what this means for us as a regulator. There's 4 things really that I want to highlight. Firstly, that as a regulator, we want to be, and I'm seeing that we're a lot more open to learn from others. We've had to ensure that as we respond to COVID, while we learn from others, we apply what is locally relevant. And that was really tested during this time. Our collaborations have deepened, they've strengthened, and they've expanded. And so we note the importance of us collaborating with the various range of stakeholders. And also quite importantly is the academic community that would work with us and enable us as a regulator to make science-based decisions, so that our decisions are not based on anything else but the science that we that supports any decision that we make. We found that we needed to be very agile. There needed to be a sense of urgency in how we work. I mean, the pace of data that was available, you know, during this period of the COVID response. I mean, we saw it even with the AstraZeneca vaccine. 1 week we authorized it. Literally a week later, we had new data, you know, around the 501YV2 variant, and we needed to be responsive to that, right? So with the complexity of diseases, with the fast pace of data being generated, it is clear to us that we have to be very agile as a regulator. We have to be very responsive and really not be rigid in how we operate. And then lastly, this really is core, you know, to our ethos and our fabric, so to say, in that we have to remain to be a stringent regulator. The decisions that we make will remain to be science-based to ensure that the public can continue to trust the health products that are in our market. And now, you know, I make an example of, you know, with the in vitro diagnostic tests that we authorized in response to COVID quite early on last year. You know, we saw a number of regulators, you know, issuing emergency use authorization, but we were very stringent because we were aware of their varied performance, and we insisted that we have to conduct our own validation assays in the country. And that has fared well for us. We've seen other regulators, you know, recall these products, you know, terminate the emergency use listing, and we haven't had to do that because we ensured, you know, that these products are compliant right from the beginning. So we've learned a lot, and you know, it's quite an exciting time for us as a regulator. Lots to learn, a lot to reflect on, even at this point with COVID-19. And Portia will share in, you know, in the next minute or so around, you know, our response when it comes to clinical trials related to COVID-19. So I just want to thank you again for inviting us. I thought, let me share at a very high level what some of our thoughts are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boitumelo. That was insightful, and it's really encouraging to hear that that the SACRA intake is to be enabling. Definitely a big change from what we've known from the past. I would like to ask everybody to hold on to their questions, type them into the chat box, so that after the presentation of Ms. Portia Nkambule, we can have an interactive session with the SACRA executive team. Portia, can I ask you to start sharing your screen and unmute yourself? Then I will first introduce you to the audience. Ms. Portia Nkambule is the Chief Regulatory Officer of SACRA. She is a pharmacist with a master's degree in public health and studied her B.Pharm degree at the University of Witwatersrand. She received training on pharmacovigilance at the Uppsala Drug Monitoring Center in Sweden, and she has worked for the Medicines Control Council of South Africa, now SACRA, since 2000. She has extensive experience in medicines registration, variations reviews, clinical trial regulation, bioequivalence protocol reviews, GCP inspections, and reviews of unregistered medicines and pharmacovigilance. She will be presenting clinical trials supported during the pandemic. Portia, it's a pleasure to introduce you. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gavin. Can you see my slides?
Yes, slides are on and your camera is on as well. Thank you.
Okay, let me do this. Okay, thank you. I'll be taking you through the status of clinical trials at SACRA, and also take you through, okay, sorry. All right, great. Yeah, I'll be taking you through the clinical trial approvals process and the timelines, and also the COVID-19 therapeutic trials and COVID-19 vaccine trials, the status thereof, and also guidelines, you know, what has SACRA done in response to COVID-19 pandemic, and also lastly talk about the areas of improvement. With regards to the clinical trial process and timeline, I just wanted to share the process that is being followed by SACRA when it comes to approval of clinical trial. And when we look at it, it's more of a three-step process where it's, you know, applications get submitted and then reviewed, and then there's an outcome. And what I can say is that with regards to the first step, once an application has been submitted, you know, it gets screened, and then if everything has been submitted and it complies with the application's requirements, then it will be accepted for review and it will be allocated to the reviewers. And then if it doesn't, then it will be given category 6. That means that it has been rejected at screening, and it has got, you know, there are several, you know, major deficiencies that needs to be corrected. Once it's been accepted for review, then the evaluator will do the review and submit a review to the CTC. The CTC is the Clinical Trials Committee that will do the peer review of that particular report. And the report can be given a category, either category 1A, which means that everything that has been submitted complies. Then, we've got ethics approval, and everything that has been submitted complies to all the requirements for clinical trial applications, and the study will be approved. And when we give it a category 1B, it means that we only have ethics approval pending. So the study will be approved subject to ethics committee approval. And for those categories that are granted, those studies that are granted category 2A, those ones will be the ones that when the response come in, it will be, reviewed internally, and there are only mostly administrative issues that are pending. And with regards to category 2B, that means that once the response is received, the original reviewer can review the response and can also finalize it. It doesn't have to go back to the Clinical Trials Committee for further deliberation. Then we also have category 3, which is where a response that comes through has to be deliberated by the Clinical Trials Committee, meaning that the issues that have been identified were so major that would need the committee to deliberate on that response. And with regards to category 4, this is when this application that is submitted will require a specialist opinion that would be outside the CTC. And with regards to category 5, this is where the study will be rejected based on scientific basis, so scientific merit, yeah. So as the process as projected there, it shows for category 5, then the study will be rejected, and then for all the others which had been category 1A, 1B, 2As, 2B, 3s, and 4s that would have eventually turned into 1A or 1B, those would be approved. So that concludes, the approval process for clinical trials. With regards to the COVID-19 clinical trials, in response to the pandemic, what we have decided to do as SACRA is that, the COVID-19 trials should be submitted at any time, and they shouldn't follow any predetermined submission date. And we have also worked on the application form, the Public Health Emergency version, that is the version April 2020. This is to assist the applicants in completing their application with just minimal information that will be required. And those applications need to be submitted to the dedicated email address called ctcresponse@sacra.org.za. And what we targeted as our review timeline, at least for the first response or recommendation, that we should be able to issue a recommendation within 7 to 10 days of receipt of application. And indeed, the approval timelines will differ per study, also per, this will depend on the queries that would have been raised and the concerns, as I've indicated in the previous slide, with regards to the different categories that are granted to, clinical trials. And also we have resolved to also expedite the review of protocol amendments, investigators and sites. The slide will be, I'll be showing the COVID-19 trials that have been received by SACRA, and those include therapeutics and vaccine trials. With regards to COVID-19 trials, the COVID-19 vaccine trials, we have received 14 of those, and 10 have been approved, and then 4 have recently been submitted under review. And of the 75 total COVID-19 trials received, 61 were COVID-19 therapeutics clinical trial applications. And for this one, we have made a final decision on 56 trials, and then 5 CTAs, which have been recently submitted under review. And then what we have seen is that we have taken the average approval timeline for these COVID-19 trials is 35 days. This also includes the time taken by the applicants to respond to the queries and recommendations raised by the CTC. I've also included a slide that will talk to non-COVID clinical trials. and so that at least when we expedite the review of COVID-19 trials, we shouldn't leave the other ones behind. And with regards to non-COVID-19 clinical trials, we have received a total of 157. Of those ones, we have made final decisions on 100 CTAs, and about 57 are under review. I just want to also qualify that 47 have recently been submitted, of those ones that are still under review. So what we also find is that the current average approval timeline, or the final decision timeline that we make with the non-COVID-19 clinical trials, is about 95 days. What I'll also need to share with the members here is that when responding to COVID-19, as the CEO has indicated, we also had to adjust our guidelines because we couldn't, do business as usual, in the pandemic situation. So we have also developed a SACRA policy on the conduct of clinical trials of health products during the current COVID-19 pandemic. And we also worked on the GCP training and expedited review of clinical trial applications during COVID-19 pandemic. And also in April 2020, we came up with a clinical trial application form that is a guidance in conditions of a public health emergency. And also recently in March, we have developed or revised a guideline that talks to oversight and monitoring in clinical trials. And lastly, we have also worked on the areas of improvement. What is it that we want to see happening as SACRA? And I've indicated previously with regards to the average approval timeline. So we need to work on those and improve on the approval timeline, as we are a member of the AVAREF platform, WHO platform. So AVAREF has a target review timeline of 60 working days. So this is what we're also trying to work towards, or even approve it in a lesser time. And our CEO always tells us that once you set a target and set a momentum in how you do things, we must learn from COVID. So we need to get the learnings that we have acquired from the pandemic, and then also apply to the BAU. So we shouldn't relax and say now, because of that was COVID, and then now this is BAU, so we need to improve on those target timelines. And what we've also identified is the capacity of reviewers, both internal and external, that we need to increase that. And with regards to meeting dates, we are busy proposing having frequent clinical trials committee meetings to improve on the timelines instead of following a schedule. And with regards to the approval process, we know that it's a bit onerous, especially when you have to be sending applications through a dedicated email address. And CEO did indicate it in his slides that one of the special project that SACRA will be going into is the digitization of all the processes in SACRA. So the clinical trial approval process will be included. And what we're going to also do is that we need to improve. We will improve on our communications with the stakeholders, and also continue collaboration with other regulatory authorities in the regulation of clinical trials. I think that was my last slide, Chair. That was my last.
Yeah, thank you very much, Portia, for those insights in your internal processes, and also your efforts to improve and learn. I definitely echo the learn from COVID. I already saw a question in the chat box that is definitely aligned to that. Before we go to the questions, I would just like to introduce the last person from the SACRA executive team, which is Ms. Kristelna Reineke. She is the Chief Operations Officer of SACRA, and she holds a Master in Business Administration from the Edinburgh Business School. She also has a B.Pharm degree from the University of the Northwest, and in addition, she has been endorsed and certified, amongst others, for business strategy execution, designing agile operations, project management, the Prince2 Foundation, lean management for all sectors, team and leadership management skills 2020, and import and export trade logistics. So before we look at the audience questions, please still note them down in the chat box. After that, we can unmute members of the audience to shoot questions directly at the SACRA team. The first question that I have is, I'm not sure who posted it, but it says COVID-19 clinical trial approval time 35 days. What are some of the processes that can be taken and implemented to non-COVID clinical trials, which are now stated at 95 days? Who of the SACRA team is willing to take that question? Vicky, will you? Oh, sorry,
Okay.
I saw your camera.
Okay, Chair, do you want me to go ahead?
Please do, Portia.
Portia, yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. T. I also wanted to mention on the call that we've been joined by our team, Ms. Kidibone Matlachi, and I think, I'm not sure if Mr. Tutlangsotlo is on the call as well, that will also assist with regards to operational questions. With regards to this question, you know, the lessons learned from, you know, us working on COVID-19 clinical trial approvals is that, you know, we will need to have, you know, to work on our resources. And as I've indicated in my last slides, that talks to areas of improvement. What we have been doing is that because we're prioritizing COVID-19, you know, clinical trial applications, the resources that we have, we will use those to prioritize the COVID-19 applications. So for us to be able to get to use the lessons learned when dealing with COVID-19 applications, moving to the BAU normal applications, clinical trial applications, we'll need to work on our resources, number one. And number two, what we have also identified is the issue of, you know, digitization, as I've mentioned. And luckily, we've got our Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Christelle Narenaka, who will be working with us on that, so that, you know, the time it takes for us to be going through, you know, the applications and having many electronic submission, you know, email dedicated email addresses. Then if we have a digitized system that is, you know, well designed and that could talk to our needs, and, you know, with the press of a button, one is able to be able to share dossier or to share a clinical trial application, and to also, you know, communicate with you know, external stakeholders, and also with regards to our evaluators. And the other issue is that what we have discussed and looked at internally is the processes that we have in place currently. That, you know, what we have been doing with the COVID-19 applications, as soon as an application comes through, gets prioritized, we do screening and so forth, and in no time, you know, it gets reviewed, and our meetings are not scheduled, are not predetermined. As soon as there's a report, we call for a meeting, and then those you know, reports can be discussed. So these are some of the things that we're looking at, and we hope with time we'll be able to meet the, you know, the timeline already that we have set, because that is the target that we have set ourselves, you know, for 35 days for COVID-19. Then we need to apply that to the business as usual clinical trial applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for that answer. I have no further questions in the chat box. Just perhaps a question from my side. It's on everybody's lips, or at least it's on everybody's agenda in the Research Institute, is the Sisonke trial. How has SACRA, in what timeline was that approved? Because I understand it was really a last-minute submission. Can you maybe share some of your experiences in the Sisonke application, and how quick was the approval? Also considering the magnitude of vaccinating 500,000 healthcare workers under a phase 3 trial.
Okay. Oh, yes, thank you, Dr. T. What I can share with the members here is that we do not even have what we call weekends, or whether it's time to stop working or and so forth. So when we have an urgent matter to address, weekend or no weekend, whether it's night or so on, we work throughout. So what happened was that the team had to work flat out. Where as soon as the application was received, it was reviewed, and comments were sent back to the applicant. And also, when we're sending the comments to the applicants or queries or deficiencies, we'll also give a very tight timeline to the applicant to the effect of a 24-hour period. And if the applicant is not able to respond to that, they can always, indicate that they are not able to respond to that, and these are the issues, and we can give them an extension. And with regard to the exact timeline, I have my colleague on the call, Kidiboni, who can share with us the exact timeline, how long we took, to approve the Sisonke trial.
If I can also just come in, Portia, I mean, just to mention also that, one of the approaches that we took right at the beginning of the pandemic was that every COVID-related clinical trial application for medicine, etc., would be expedited. And we've published, specifically even with the vaccines, we did publish the processes. So, as Portia indicates, everything that was COVID-related, we've had to work overtime. And hence, you would note that with the number of COVID-related clinical trials, vaccines, etc., we've taken a much shorter time than what we would generally do, because we had to basically put all our resources into this and work overtime more often than not. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it seems that overtime is part of our daily routine at the moment. I just have a comment from Marcel Haskins, and she mentions, I agree with Portia from the ethics committee point of view. The large number of expedited reviews received definitely influenced the capacity to do other reviews and stretched the ethics committee resources as well. Which is understandable. So thanks for sharing that comment. Then I've got a question from Bernd Rosenkrantz. He mentioned internationally, state-of-the-art scientific and operational developments, especially in early medicines development, are discussed between experts from agencies, industry, academia, and CROs in dedicated scientific scientific on a regular base. Examples for this are the UFIMED in Europe and also the AGA in Germany. What is the opinion of SACRA about such an initiative in South Africa?
Should I take that, Dr. T?
You can take it, and then I'll comment afterwards if need be, Portia.
Okay, thank you. Chairperson, I just want to understand, Prof. Ben's question. He mentions the UFIMED and the other ones. So I just want to understand, is he referring to the pre-submission meetings that, are being held with, prospective applicants, for the regulator to guide and so forth? So can you just repeat the question?
Perhaps we
have to unmute myself.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for going through the chat. That is more scientific. These are scientific meetings, like a scientific organization. AGAH is a scientific early drug medicines development organization, where there are open discussions about first-in-man studies and other issues related to early clinical development and early medicines development. And participants from the agencies and industry and clinical research organizations have a very open discussion about that. It's general topics, and it's not on a specific project. And it has been very useful. It goes on now in Germany for 20 years. and it's like a family together discussing this. Would there be an interest and commitment by SACRA to also participate in such an initiative in South Africa?
No, I mean, definitely, you know, and as in one of my points that I made, that we realized the importance of collaborating, you know, with a number of stakeholders, one of them being the academic community. So we would be very keen to be part of that. And, you know, to the point that I think you also made is around probably also having a dedicated one for the African region, because we do have some really strong scientific communities that we can kind of model, you know, that similar approach to. So yeah, we would be keen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got further questions from attendees. This is from Tiani CBC. What are the plans to improve responsiveness to submissions for clinical trials? As noted, some delays still noted. There's somebody that can, I believe this was covered in the presentation from Porsche as well, where they take lessons learned. Still
Yes.
resonating the one-liner learned from COVID that they can then apply in the non-COVID submissions as well. There's another question. We are not receiving acknowledgement for notifications which are being sent to the SACRA CTC notifications at sacra.org.za mailbox. This includes progress reports and updated reports, and this comes from Itumeleng. I'm not too sure myself how these acknowledgements are being handled by SACRA. There's somebody in operations that can comment on that. Has there been an issue with notifications?
Let's have Tosang or Kiriboni can speak to that.
Good day, this is Kidiboni speaking. Yes, over the past months, we were working with limited staff, meaning there were 2 vacant positions, 3 when we include also the acting manager. So at the time, we were prioritizing on studies, COVID studies, new trials, protocol amendments, and additional sites and investigators. So in February, we received 2 colleagues, technical staff, whom they have been trained during the previous 2 months. So in the coming 2 months, then we'll look at also attending to other correspondence that we did not have time to look at over COVID and the previous months.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. What are the plans to have more CTC meetings for submission to cater for the submission delays, as average days are 95 is a bit too long? Is there a plan to increase the frequency to address the turnarounds?
Chair, if I may come in through Dr. T, in my last slides where I was talking about areas of improvement, this is what we have seen to say that if we increase, CTC meetings, that will also assist us with, improving our approval timelines. This is something that is on the cut, and the senior manager, Mr. Tutlan Sitloro and Kidibon on the call, are busy working on that. So this should be implemented very soon. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. Then I've got a comment. There is no guidance document for substantial amendments post-approval. For example, the standalone 1B submission, which only impacts the informed consent form, but no update to the protocol. Is that something that SACRA considers?
May come in, yes, what I like about these meetings is that gaps are highlighted, and if this is a major pain point, and it appears to be, then it's something that we need to look into and see if we cannot stratify amendments such that we pay relevant attention to amendments according to type, such that the substantial amendments that stand alone and can be easily handled, we are able to do so. But obviously, that will go along in terms of, that will go along with how we restructure our resources, such that we are able to stratify even operationally in terms of all these different types of amendments. So yes, we'll look into this, and if Diani can just write me an email and explain exactly the nature of this pain point, then I'll be able to put a plan in place. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that commitment. Tiani, if you would like the email address, you can reach out to the SACRA team and we will get that for you. I've got another note that with submissions, the size of the email or the documents attached to an email is a huge problem, and normally submissions need to be separated over several emails. Is there a plan to increase the email size? And that comes from Bridget.
If I may come in again, this is an issue that has to do obviously with capacity of emails. It was not designed to receive such big documents as would be typical for CTA submissions. The long-term plan is to work on a portal. The process has started. It's a bit slow because we have competing priorities in terms of the units that also need ITC attention. But it's something that we are mindful of, and we do ask industry to bear with us in terms of the number of emails that need to be sent, depending on the size of the submission. It's something that we are looking at. Sometimes we do allow electronic submissions by means of well, I'm used to discs, but there are new things now. What do you call them? Yeah, those little things that you put into your
memory stick.
The USB.
Yes.
The memory filled on the memory stick. Great. That was great.
Where I'm showing my age. Now, where it becomes untenable to send a submission through an email, we do make exceptions, and the unit is always fighting with me that I do allow exceptions where we can receive something by way of a memory stick, so that we are able to handle it properly instead of through several emails. But like I said, the long-term plan is to have our own portal that will have enough bandwidth to handle any size of document, and obviously that's tied in with our long-term digitization plan. But in the meantime, I do make exceptions to much to the chagrin of the unit. But I suppose that's all that we can do at the moment until we have a long-term and permanent solution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for that. It's a good prospect to have a portal in the future. Thank you for that. I've got a question from Carol. Will SACRA in the near future organize a workshop with regards to the completion of the CTF1 application forms? As we see different comments from reviewers, can we standardize application form completion? Ties in with lessons learned. Can somebody from SACRA take that? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can take this one. Okay, thank you. What I can maybe ask Carol to do is that, you know, SACRA usually have what we call biannual workshops with SACRA or with, you know, with clinical trial stakeholders. So what we could do is we can have in one of the workshops, you know, include this as part of our way of taking applicants through the completion of the CTF1 form. And I think we once did this in it was in 2015, 2017 in one of the workshops. So we can do this again if it's required, and Carol can just write to us, and then we can have it as an agenda item for the annual workshops. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for that commitment. Then I've got a COVID-related question. We are all aware that FDA has withdrawn approval of certain COVID testing kits. Will SACRA be following this guide if similar kits are approved in South Africa?
No, thank you for that. We've looked at the list of the ones that they've withdrawn. And when we last checked, it was none of the ones that we had authorized. Again, what we will do if there is one that, because we didn't apply a reliance mechanism when we authorized those tests, we made the decision based on the validation. So that would be the approach that we take. However, because the approved manufacturers are required to report to us, the expectation is that if their product is recalled they will give us a report and they will tell us on the performance of the product in the country, and we will then assess that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. That's clear. Another question from our own Sarika from EXCO. There was a clinical trial laboratory guide sent out to industry for comments. What is the status of this document process?
Hi. During COVID, we had to reprioritize which guidelines we work on. On this guideline, we did receive comments from the stakeholders, so we'll need to go back and consider them and update the guideline for implementation.
Understood. Thank you for that response. And then I think we can take a final question before we move on. What is the current policy by SACRA towards placebo-controlled COVID-19 vaccine trials, since there is a scarcity of vaccines and no gold standard? And this is from Sanette Aspinall.
No, thank you. That is actually a matter that we've had some questions around, and we're deliberating with our technical expert committee, and we'll issue a position soon. I don't know if Portia wants to comment on this.
No, Dr. T. Yeah, I concur with what you've just said. We'll be issuing a statement soon.
Excellent. We'll be on the lookout for that, and we will share that via SACRA as well on the LinkedIn. That concludes the questions that I had in the chat box. So thank you very much for the attendees posting these questions. Is there anybody else with urgent questions? Please let it be known now. No? Thank you very much to the SACRA Executive Committee. It's never easy to stand almost trial in front of the stakeholders from SACRA because they are all aware of their urgency, and that we're not always that familiar with the processes within SACRA as well, and your challenges. So thank you very much for those insights. It was truly appreciated, and I'm sure that that all the attendants have enjoyed those presentations and insights as well. Portia, thank you, and Boitumelo, thank you as well for those presentations. Okay, then we can on with the agenda. Thanks again, and we can pass the mic and the stage to Vicky, our newly appointed chair. Vicky, can you take the presentation back and unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I was focusing on the discussion, and I just need to make myself a presenter.
Absolutely. Thank you. Stage is yours.
Okay, let me know if you can see my screen properly.
Yes, the slides are on and your camera is on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to the SACRA team for taking this time and joining us for this important meeting. This being the first meeting, members meeting, SACRA's members meeting, we invited also the non-members because everyone that is in the industry is very important to ensure that we continue with the discussion to build towards the clinical trials industry in South Africa. I will take you through the operational strategy for SACRA, and we'll stick to the 15 minutes. So we have a constitution. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we need to be compliant. We have a SACRA constitution, which we had to amend following the assessments that we did with the previous EXCO team. We extended the term to 4 years and also authorized the use of electronic platforms and a statement on compensation of EXCO team. What we need to do now to ensure that the members review the constitution before we can gazette the constitution, we will send it through to the members, and the members will give their comments by the 30th of April. And we expect comments. If there will be no comments, we will then accept the constitution as final. This is just to ensure that we are compliant to the requirement as a not-for-profit organization. And I'll move ahead to my next slide to introduce the EXCO team. I would like to thank these members that raised their hand and realized that there is still relevance for SACRA in the clinical trial space. SACRA positioning itself to be the conduit that actually leads stakeholder engagement in a collaborative mission. I think Dr. Teni will basically be very key to drive what SACRA stands for, the purpose for SACRA. But my time now, I just want to share with you, and you've already interacted with the different members that are represented here. I'm the chairperson, and Yeleti here is the vice chairperson. This is actually the first meeting that we're introducing everyone, and Leonard will continue as the treasurer for SACRA. We have Sorika there, also as ESCO, Dr. Eureka, Alex Lopez from Novartis, Rapala there from TCD, Yvette from Merck. Heben, you've been with SACRA now for a while, and you're with TASK. We have Victor Remete, who is an entrepreneur and also with Novo Nordisk at this moment. Dr. Tini will be introduced by Heben just after my talk, and Dr. Precious Garnett, she's with CIPLA, Elandre with PPD, and Rob, you will see more about Rob's company later because he also recently became a sponsor for SACRA, and we appreciate all the sponsors, and we will highlight who are the organization that continues to sponsor SACRA. This is our new operations strategy. So to the people that are very well aligned with SACRA and those that have been members or supporting SACRA over the years, they will know that SACRA operates through volunteers from the industry. So we are all just volunteers, volunteering our time, and we have Barbara as the coordinator for SACRA. So what we decided to do, just to realign how SACRA operates, is to create working pillars, which are led by the different EXCO members, as I've reflected. Previously, you would have had people that are assigned per the industry they represent. You will have someone that is noted as a pharma representative, CRO representative, site representative. But we realize that because of the changes that are happening within the clinical trial space, we need to adapt and create an organization that can be relevant to the need of the industry. Besides the general finance and IT communication, we have created a portfolio for business development, and I will share with you in the next slide who's responsible for those: regulatory platforms, training and development, capacity building, information hub, digitalization, site support, marketing, and also the strategy for SACRA. In this next slide, it is very important that I highlight that it's not only EXCO team that is basically currently actively involved at SACRA. The first line here highlights the lead member, who is mostly the EXCO team. but we've got a lot of people in the industry that have raised their hands whom are not SACRA EXCO, but they said that they are available and willing to support. We have people like Marisa Govender, we have people like Jane Shaw and Chris Exeter from the UK DTI. We have people like Nicolette, who was the previous SACRA chair, and she remained as a supporter for some of the activities that we do. We have Nolene there from PPD. We have Bongi Busha, who's also a recent graduate that needed raise their hand and wanted to support SACRA, and so many other people. We have George Gibson. I have to mention him because he's been very supportive with the marketing strategy and also supporting us with the digital platform at SACRA. I want you to take note of site support. We have a limitation here. You can see that we have minimal people here. We only have Yvette, who's leading site support. We have no representatives that are supporting sites. And there's a lot of activities that SACRA would like to drive that are connected with what is happening at site. So we are inviting more people to raise their hand to support Yvette Day with the activities at site. And I also take note of Marcel Haskins, who is also a support member of SACRA, and she comes from pharma ethics and will be contributing in the regulatory platform. Sarah Cohen, very strategic for us because she also is very experienced when it comes to medical devices, and we needed her to be part of the regulatory platforms. So my next slide then will introduce more of what we would like to discuss today, which is the clinical trials vision for South Africa. We have SACRA. SACRA is well aligned, and SACRA is in the process of realigning its purpose within the full context of clinical trials industry in South Africa. However, I thought it is important before we discuss the strategy to go through some of the summary of what is happening currently. I know that we received a presentation already that highlighted that for COVID-19 clinical trials, we currently had about 70 something that have been submitted to SACRA, but this information comes from a system called TrialTrove. What it basically represents is the number of clinical trials that have a start date as of 2021. So currently we have 51 that have a start date on the system. Remember, the different clinical trials registry needs to update for the information to be up to date. So this is more of a reflection. But you can see that in the previous years, I've reflected that the number of clinical trials were going down, and you see that there was a better performance for South Africa in 2020 compared to 2019. And what is much more important is also to look later, what are the key therapeutic area and who are the key sponsors for clinical trials, which is the industry continues to be the top sponsors for clinical trials. In that note, I want us to do what I have termed a need analysis when it comes to clinical trials to introduce why should we build a vision for clinical trials in South Africa? Why should we have a plan? Currently, in my view, I think each and every organization have their own plan. Every organization within South Africa is basically working towards clinical trials advancement. SACRA, for example, they have just highlighted they want to play a role of an enabler and even that of a regulator. We have different ethics committees that are playing different roles. We have organizations like MRC, we have so many other organizations like Caprisa, we have TASC, we have lots of research sites that are individually playing roles when it comes to the advancement of clinical trials. We have a lot of sponsors and pharmaceutical companies in South Africa that are playing a role within the space of clinical trials. However, do we have an actual vision as a country? Do we have a plan? What is the plan? What is the roadmap? Where are we heading to? Are we just working because we are working within our silo organization? Is there a way to find a coordinated plan together, hopefully led by SACRA? This is where I start. So I use the need analysis, Maslow's law, hierarchy of needs. I thought it would be easy. It was very easy for me. And I don't know if you can basically see. But what I have done here is to look at what are the basic levels when it comes to clinical trials. establishment and resources that we need. And when you look at the basic level, which is like sort of the survival level, when you look at the hierarchy of needs, it's the government policies. We have the legislature, we have the acts, we have the constitution, we have the protocol, which is under the NHREC. I'm not talking about the study protocol. You have the PHRC, you have the Department of Health structures that are supporting drug development. We have the local policies, the guideline, the ethics, the international policies that we adapt to and also align with and also partner with. And we also have the World Health Organization. We have the system, we have the South African National Clinical Trials Registry, which obviously we continuously work on. We have the PANCT, we have the NHRD, and we also have infrastructure. One of the key things about South Africa is that we do have infrastructure when it comes to the conduct of clinical trials. Then we come to the safety level, where we have the institute, the systems and resources. We have institution of higher learning in the hospitals. We have the government systems, regulatory bodies, and all these kind of systems that we need. We have disease burdens. We have the skills resources. We have different networks that are operating within South Africa. Currently now we have the core VPN that is much operating in South Africa. This shows us that we have gone past this level, although obviously they can be interactive, but we have gone past this level. And then we move over to what I call social level. So at the social level, that's where we look at our reputation. We look at our capacity. That's the reason why I showed you initially where we are with the number of clinical trials. That's where you look at the activities of clinical trials that are happening. Where do these activities come from? Are they driven by South Africa, the need of healthcare in South Africa, or are they driven practically by sponsor company? How do we become the drivers of the kind of research that is conducted in South Africa? We look at operational turnaround times. We discussed that now, for example, when you look at SACRA, but there are other systems that are impacting the turnaround times than SACRA. SACRA can improve the turnaround times to 60 days, but if we still have a longer period, for example, with the export permits, it's still going to impact us. We highlighted now on the laboratory guide for clinical trials, for example, how can that work to improve that as an example? We look at the investment by the government, how much is being invested by the government in South Africa when it comes through to clinical trials, conduct and drug development itself. There's a lot of government requirements. Now we're talking about COVID manufacturing. We've been having a lot of discussion from the government when it comes to the pharmaceutical operations, you know, the deficit when it comes to the tax of importing drugs into South Africa. System integration being another problem. I mean, we have different ethics committees, a regulator, all requesting for the same documents, although we are operating, but we need to look at what are the other things that we can improve. We know the economy input that is driven by clinical trials. And then I like this part. This was where I think we are in South Africa, and this is where I think we should celebrate ourselves. It's an esteem level. This is where we realize our capacity, we realize our potential. I mean, COVID-19 research, South Africa has done very well, and many other research. We are #2 in Africa when it comes to research, as per the clinicaltrials.gov registry. There may be other qualifying factors, but the fact remains we are #2 and Egypt is #1. So we need to look at research not necessarily based on who is sponsoring it. We need to look at research based on the output of research, not necessarily who's the sponsor. So if you look at who's the sponsor, South Africa may be the lead, with the sponsor being the industry, but Egypt is the lead because they have an inclusive, probably, research system. And for me, it is very important to look at Egypt and ask ourselves, what is Egypt doing? Have we done an assessment to see how different are we from Egypt, and how can we basically learn from Egypt when it comes to local research? We have global presence. We have many of the pharma companies and many of the large CRO companies in South Africa. We are right here. But then, how do we build a sustainable and a growing organization? That is at the self-actualization level. I know that I may be tearing down the Maslow hierarchy of needs, but for me, it was very easy to use this just to say, we are here, it's 2021. What is then the vision, 2025? SACRA has tabulated their vision when it comes to digitalization, when it comes to timelines moving to 60 days. So, but beyond 2025, where are we going? To at what extent should we have the roadmap documented? And basically, who should lead that roadmap when it comes to clinical trials? And we are saying that stakeholder engagement and collaboration is very important. We need to have a very well-designed system to collaborate as South African stakeholders. And we are saying SACRA is well positioned to be leading those kind of collaboration. I think COVID has taught us to learn not to compete, but to work together. It is a very great time for research. We have a lot to reflect on, and we shouldn't miss this opportunity to grow and find ourselves building a plan, a roadmap, including what is going to come with NHI, including what is coming also with the digitalization, individualized medicine, and everything that is required in order for us to be sustainable and to continue to grow. And in that note, I would like to end and invite Dr. Stender. Before Dr. Stender speaks, I'm sure Heben may like to introduce him a little bit. But thank you very much. And I hope we're going to have a fruitful discussion later on what is the vision and how can SACRA contribute to that, to develop the vision for clinical trials. I thank you.
No, we thank you, Vicky. We are very happy to have you at the helm, and you comparing us to Egypt. I even see the pyramid. Just make sure that we don't ask advice from Egypt to keep channels open. But otherwise, thank you very much. We are happy, and I'm sure that you will give great direction to SACRA under your leadership. Another person we have on the Exco, which we are very thrilled about, is indeed Dr. Tini. He's also the Managing Director of VI Research. We already had him as a non-Exco member last year to present, and he will guide us in how to get to a common purpose for SACRA. Tini, you may unmute yourself. I already see your screen. Maybe you can also activate your camera.
Can you hear me? I did unmute myself.
I can hear you. I just can't
Perfect.
see you. I can see your screen. Or would you like
Excellent.
to remain?
No, I'm not going to share my screen. I won't do the attendees a favor. There's more important stuff to see on the screen. But Heben, thanks very much. Appreciate that. I'm going to be quick. I think I'm really grateful for Vicky, our chairperson, of sharing a macro view of South Africa and the environment in which we operate. My task and what our team tasked me to do today, and this is a team effort that I'm presenting here, consisting of 4 team members, Vicky, myself, Rapala and Alex, where we started looking at strategy for this organization, where we believe that in the past there was not a big effort to specifically strategize and to put effort into a concise strategy and strategy execution. Under the leadership of Vicky, this is now one of the priorities. So I'm going to take you through this briefly. What I want to share with you, maybe the first thing to say, when I share this with you, this is a SACRA view, not a South Africa view. This is not a vision or a strategy for South Africa. As an organization of SACRA, I want to share with you the framework which we will adopt and through the Exco and our members eventually sign off on. This is our framework, and I'll briefly take you through this, that we are starting with our core values that will drive this organization, and we want to make sure as an organization that we have a true North Star. I see on my side, it's there's a space between the TR and the UE, but that should be true North Star. We need a guiding system when we make difficult decisions that these are the values that we will every time go back to, and this represents this organization. We'll come back to that in a moment. Then, as a team, we decided that often in strategy, vision and mission gets mixed up. The one person calls this a vision, and the next person a mission, and there's often very much confusing. And we said, let's simplify strategy. Let's make it something palatable. So we decided, forget about vision and mission and getting confused. We are simply going to create a purpose in eloquent language that will be the direction we want to follow, underpinned by the value system that we've created. So we will talk as SACRA of our purpose, not our vision and mission. Then the third part was we need to also think about our brand promise. When someone sees SACRA, they must know we stand for the following brand promise. That brand, that template, when they see the SACRA template, they must know this is the brand promise, and we will unpack that. Under objectives, so now we need to move away from theory and getting a bit more practical. We said we need specific objectives, and what we decided as a theme that we actually want to create themes as a strategy team. We simply want to focus on themes, and I will share you some of the themes that we've come up with, and we then want to disseminate these themes into the operating teams, the subcommittees, where they will basically build their own operational plans aligned with those themes. Then we decided, number 5, there's no point in having a plan and not measuring it. What you can't measure, you can't manage. So we will also have a strategic dashboard. I'll show you briefly on that. And then we want to share with you the operating model of how does strategy get together with operations. So let me go to values briefly. These are some, and this is by far not the final step, but as a team so far we've had 2 meetings. We haven't had so much time to work on this. These are some of the values that we thought are important. To be neutral. We are not representing a single stakeholder. We are apolitical. We need to be a neutral organization, and everything we do needs to promote that neutrality and not be pro-country, anti-this or pro-this. So neutrality is one value. Inclusiveness. This is not a big boy, big girl club. This is inclusive of everybody. We want to be a fair representation and partnerships. We want to subscribe to scientific rigor. So whatever we do must pass the scientific rigor test. We want to be member-centric. So is it to the benefit of our members? All members, not just me, not just Kevin, not just Vicky, everybody. Are we benefiting our members? And are we relevant? Now, this will remain in the forefront of our key discussions pertaining to the industry. If we as an organization are not relevant, we have no reason to exist. So one of the key things, and it will come back under objectives, we will have to work towards what makes SACRA relevant. What makes SACRA a necessary part of that hierarchy that Vicky has presented? Why do we need to be part of that hierarchy, or can we just stop the organization and the country will go on as it did? Very important part for us. In terms of purpose, this is a difficult one because we want to try and get a short, eloquent vision, mission, purpose sentence. We're still working on this, but this sums up some of the discussions that we have. SACRA supports the South African economy by contributing to the progressive realization of a flourishing clinical research country and global partner. I'm not saying this will be the final step. We will definitely send it back to our EXCO and members, but this is where the 14 member currently sits. In terms of brand promise, we decided this is important, but we decided to postpone this because there are more important work to do, and we will rather focus on other areas. So from a priority perspective, we didn't spend any time on that. Then in terms of our objectives, these are the 5 themes that we considered. The first one is diversity and transformation. Very important. We feel passionate about that. We decided to place this in our as the #1 theme. We are also quite passionate about our membership and growing our membership. Now you can see that diversity and membership needs to be linked together. There's no point in only having CROs as member. We want academics, we want regulators, we want as many different stakeholders and as diverse as possible as membership. We also want to look at retention rate. Engagement is a theme. How do we engage with all the stakeholders, and what activities do we need? Relevance comes back here. If we're not relevant, we have no reason to exist. And then partnerships. So these are the 5 themes along which we will create strategic, measurable objectives, and it will be populated. For instance, the easy one would be membership. So let's say we currently have 70 members, and we put a strategic objective during our term. We want to increase that by 10% in year 1, 20% year 2, and 30% in year. We'll put the numbers in here, and that then we will work together, and it will go into the operating teams to fulfill those and work with us. Then we have strategic dashboards. Again, this is something that we'll work on depending on the actual, but we'll have a dashboard showing the membership numbers, the financial performance, the membership diversity. Are we diverse? The 6-month rolling budget, anything like this. But we'll have a dashboard that gets updated in terms of the actual versus the goal that we set. Now, I think for me, this one is very important because it pulls everything together, where we have, for instance, of 5 strategic focus areas here in diversity membership. So these are the pillars on which we will build our strategy. And here we have our operating subcommittees. So business development, capacity building, etc. All of these people are here. And within this framework, this matrix, every operating subcommittee will then have to work, how will they promote diversity? Now, finance and admin might not be easy for them to work towards finance to diversity, but one example is they could say, we propose a reduced membership fee for students because we want students, so they can promote diversity in that way. Membership, each of these people think, how do we grow membership? How do we grow engagement, relevance, and partnerships? And ultimately, when we put this together, this will be our strategic plan, our tactical plan, our operational plan, and the committee, the strategic committee, will then keep the ties together to ensure that we execute during the following 4 years, which is our term. And then just lastly, we have a project plan. So we're project planning everything to make sure that we reach our goals in a timely basis. So, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. That's all from my side at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tini. Indeed, the strategy will give us direction and keep us up the banks. Yeah, I've got the pleasure as well to introduce you to Rapala. Rapala will facilitate our session with audience, and hopefully in that engagement we will define a country's vision for clinical trials and also determine how we can realize that vision. Rapala, would you like to take over and start your...
Yes, Ruben, thanks for that.
Excellent.
All right, okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Also, just to start off by extending appreciation to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. I think for an organization like SACRA, and especially given where we are now, it's an absolute privilege for us when we have an audience, particularly our members, willing to hear all that we've thought of and that all that we'd like to share with all of you. So it's an absolute privilege for us, and we really appreciate it. But for this part of the conversation, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. We want to invite all of you, we want to invite our audience to join in on, first of all, what you've heard, into what we hope will be a meaningful and an open conversation, because we remember centric organization. And as you would have heard from Tini, it's something that we're using as one of our guiding principles to say whatever we're doing as an organization, we need to always ensure that we're putting our members at the very center. So the very first thing we'd like to hear from you is about your thoughts on what you would have had, and even the behind the scenes process that Tini spoke to, just to make sure that you are also part of it. Because for us, we appreciate fully that a process such as the one we're going through now cannot be unilateral. It cannot be SACRA alone. It cannot be the EXCO team having the conversations and deciding on what the broader organization should look like. That process, we need participation from everyone. We need engagement from everyone, the wider industry, so that ultimately the final value proposition on the table for SACRA speaks to all our interests. And then secondly, and Madam Chair spoke to this as well in the beginning, which is also about the broader vision for our industry. We also want to invite you into that conversation where we deliberate whether do we need a vision, a wider vision? Do we need our very own version of an Africa 2063, an NDP 2030? Do we need to develop it? And if the answer is yes, how should that look like? How should that be created, considering the fact that we want this to be a participative process, if it is to be a process. We want everyone to be involved, and who should be at the table. So as we're going through, as much as I'm going to have a panel, I have Tini, who's available to join us just now, as well as Vicky. I'm going to ask them, if possible, to switch on the videos so we can get a bit of FaceTime. But for us, very important that as much as they're available to respond to questions, and I'll be posing some questions to them as well, we're more interested in hearing from our audience, where you guys say to us, you hear the direction that we're taking, you hear the stuff we're putting on the table, and you think we're either heading in the right direction, you think we need to be looking elsewhere, you think we need to approach it differently. So this, more than anything, is an invitation to be part of this conversation. We want to keep it conversational, we want to keep it constructive more than anything. So feel free to put as many questions as you have on the chat function, but you can also raise your hand if you're comfortable talking to us, and one of my colleagues will definitely make sure we put you in. But on that note, I want to start off with our very own chairperson. And the question to get us started really is, do we, and you partly spoke to this Vicky a bit earlier, but importantly, the first one is, do we need one? And importantly, the why. So it might be a yes or a no initially, but more importantly, let's speak to why we need a vision. Why do we need a coordinated framework to bring everyone on board into a conversation for us to make sure that we're not talking past each other? And I might be giving away some of the answer, but I'm going to stop here. And Madam Chair, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Raphael, for introducing that. Okay. I kind of hear my voice. Maybe if you mute your lines.
All right, I'm going to mute mine.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we do need a vision. I actually, my first response is that where there is no vision, people perish. We need to have a plan. In everything that we do, we need to know why we're doing what we're doing, and we need to know how we're going to get to the destination. So I think we've been working as the clinical trials community in silos in South Africa, and we've done very well. But we're at a point where we need to decide, do we want to go on a high, or do we want to stay where we are, or maybe go down? We're at a deciding point now. This is where we need to come up with a plan together as stakeholders. Everybody is on high alert now. We cannot miss this opportunity. Everyone is on high alert. Government is ready to listen. The general population is ready to listen. Why should we not take this opportunity and come up with a plan that can drive clinical trials in South Africa, and not drive it for the sponsors? We need to be very clear on that. We're not driving clinical trials, and making South Africa a destination. We're making South Africa a partner. We're making South Africa a country that can be able to plan and assess the health needs of its country and say, what should we invest in when it comes to drug development? And how should we invest in drug development in a collaborative effort. That's why we need it, because we depend on it. At the end of the day, we are all patients. I like that statement. We are all patients. It's not necessarily for clinical trial participants, but it's for all of us as patients, because we, one way or the other, have taken Panado. I can put it as simple as that, Rapala.
Okay, all right, now, Vicky, very well said. And I think you used a word in there which was part of many of our engagements, the collaborative approach to this. And I know it's something we spent quite a bit of time. We translated it into always ensuring that we're inclusive with everything we're doing as well. So I couldn't agree more. Very well said. And I also just want to highlight this for the benefit of our audience. So as much as these questions we pose to Tini and Vicky, there are also questions to our audience. So if you have a response, a comment, you have a follow-up question yourself, please feel free to put it on the group. I see there are questions coming in, so we'll try to also take them as we're moving along. But I'm going to try and work on themes so that we're keeping it as conversational as possible. All right, so Vicky, building on to the collaborative theme, and I just want to shift over, maybe invite Tini into the conversation now, that we have a lot of stakeholders in the industry. We have a lot of people who are involved at some part or another. And how do we then, through the process that you spoke to earlier, how do we make sure that we're not leaving any behind? How do we make sure that we finally get into a point with as many stakeholders as we have, that we get to a point where the interests of all those stakeholders are represented? And secondly, is it even possible to do that, just given the number of stakeholders in the equation?
Thanks, Rapala. I think as a team, we have deliberated this question. So the first thing that we saw, there's some evidence that SACRA could potentially be underperforming significantly. When I say underperforming, if we look at response rates on surveys and feedback we get from surveys, SACRA is not performing as well as we believe it could. And to change that whole system, we need to ensure that we make this organization relevant. And I actually want to take it further. We must make SACRA sexy. We must make SACRA an essential part of the debate in South Africa towards clinical trials and improvement of patient health through clinical trials. So it all starts with making us relevant. If we're not relevant, we're not going to be able to find these multi-stakeholder engagement. People would ask, but why should I? I mean, for me, it's a feather in our cap that SAPRA was so willing and so participative today. 3 very busy people, 5 very busy people, spending an hour with us, sharing with us, opening up the doors. That's the kind of thing that we want. But that's just the start. So if we can become relevant and make sure that we provide content and become the glue of this diverse stakeholder map within clinical development, clinical trials in South Africa, I firmly believe that we can play a significant role.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Tini. And Madam, do you wanna add something to that?
No, not at the moment. I compare with 10 years.
Okay. So then and I mean we've had conversations before, and I think Tini addressed a big part of it. So I also would like the two of you, Vicky, if you wouldn't mind going first, to also speak to we do appreciate fully that we where we are, there might have been a decline in relevance over time, and hence there might be the members who are not as engaged as they used to be, or who engaged as they might want to be. So my question then becomes, what do we also say though to people who in their minds they say, but we've seen this before, we've seen this movie before, we've had these conversations before, they all sound very similar, and as much as we hear you and there's good energy behind all that you're sharing with us, but it's not the first time that we hear. So how would you respond, Vicky, to that sort of sentiment?
Yes, thank you, Rapala. That is a tough one. I appreciate the question, but what I would like to say is that every SACRA exco that we have taken over from, they had a different mandate, and they were operating in different times. You know, so we are operating at a period where we have realized that if we do not up our game, we're going to remain unknown as South Africa. There was a time where clinical trials in South Africa, we didn't necessarily need to go look for them. They will come to us. So we never learned to market ourselves, you know. We were just sitting and you will receive a feasibility. But now we're at a time where the global community has become just one area, you know. So because of the change, the digitalization, the growth in the China market, the Japan market, the changes in India and everywhere else, and also the upcoming other African countries, there is a need for us to come out and be different. And it will not be done only through SACRA, you know, because I mean, we can now decide from the regulator's perspective to say that we can improve the timelines, but if there are no trials happening, what will be the trial timelines for? So we are forced. At this moment, it's no longer a nice to have to do this. We need to do it for survival. Our industry was literally dying. At this moment, we see a buzz where we see CROs coming out there with even bonuses for hiring clinical research staff. How do we make South Africa to continue with that kind of momentum? There's also another buzz when it comes to diversity of data, when it comes to clinical trials. Where should diverse data for African population come from? And if South Africa does not continue to take the lead when it comes to participating in clinical trials, we're not only letting ourselves down, we're also letting the whole of African community down. And the whole collaborative relationships and engagement that SACRA is also trying with the IVRF and all these other collaborations that they're coming up with will not happen. So hence, SACRA has no option at this moment but to find ways to build stakeholder collaboration, to build stakeholder engagement, to build that roadmap that can take clinical trials further in South Africa and Africa as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Becky. And I want to, Tini, anything to add to that before we switch to a different type of question from our audience?
Yeah, just briefly to add on, I'm fully concurring with what Vicky says. But Rapala, I'm a firm believer that change happens through good leadership. And if you look at, you know, I only know Vicky for a short time, but we are privileged to have a very passionate leader in SACRA. That gives me faith that this will be different. If you look at her LinkedIn post recently, I think maybe even today, where she said she dreamed about being the chairperson of SACRA for many years. She is that today, so she's living her own vision. So it's all about leadership. It's all about passionate leadership that will make the difference. So I just would want to add that.
I couldn't agree more, Tini. I think the times I got a call from her, I think on Sunday, Vicky, where she was thinking of something and she thought, you know what, let me check in with this one. Yeah, just so we align. So I think there definitely is no question, Vicky, about the commitment and the value that we see in your leadership. And we even speaking personally for myself, I think we know we in good hands, and we're looking forward to more of the value coming out of your leadership. So much appreciated for that. I want to just take one question here from our audience, which is a bit more operational, but Vicky, if you didn't mind speaking to this. The question reads, Vicky, you spoke about how some departments, such as digital strategy, site support, and even strategy, do not have enough people in them. As an example, site support had about 2 people. So how does one get involved? So it's about involvement, and what are the qualifications, suppose if any, for someone to become a member or also to support these departments? And this is a question posed by Precious Ndo. Precious, thanks for the question. Vicky, I'm going to pass that one over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Precious, for the question. We need more people to come on board, because you can see that this is a greater plan that we want to put together. So if you're interested, send us an email. Send an email to admin@sacraza.com, and you can also send an email to me as well. And we don't have necessarily a specific qualifications. We need people from different fields. We could even have people that have not done a clinical trials related course or something of that sort. Maybe people that have a background in computer science, people that have a background in marketing, people that have a background in strategy. So it's not necessarily health related qualifications that we need. Just raise your hand, but you must be ready to work. And you must know that we are just volunteers at this moment. But as a non-profit organization, we want to grow to a point where we can be self-sustainable. So with everyone coming on board, helping to build an organization, we want to get to a point where we have a self-sustained organization. So join us and volunteer and contribute. It is open to everyone, but you must have time, a little bit to add. Thank you, Propala.
All right, okay, now thanks, Vicky. Precious, I hope that addresses your question fully. If not, please feel free to post the follow-up. There's a comment which says, great information, Vicky. This speaks to what you shared a bit earlier. Is there plans to work with local and African CROs and entrepreneurs in clinical research? So it is not just the large CROs that are conducting trials on the continent. And the question was posed by Cosmas Collins. Yeah, Vicky, can I pack this one with you as well?
Hi, Collins. I actually saw that question. It is a key question. It speaks to what should be our plan when it comes to clinical trials. We appreciate having the international CROs and also the pharma companies that are continuously investing in South Africa. But we do need to grow ourselves as well as South Africans to be able to take the lead when it comes to the activities concerning clinical trials in South Africa. So we want to build that plan with you. Hence, we're having this discussion. We want people like you to come up and say, there's a gap here. How do we address it? So SACRA doesn't have all the answers. SACRA is a membership supported organization. Everyone in the industry is welcome to give a view and also to give input into the plan. So if you already have thoughts on how we can do that, bring them to the forth, and SACRA would like to engage with the stakeholders that are concerned for that particular aspect of the plan. So bring it forth, and we will discuss with you and other stakeholders. Is that, did I answer the question well?
Yes, I believe it did. And we could never have enough committed hands to contribute to what we're trying to do. So absolutely, if someone is in a position to come and share the ideas and contribute, that would be most welcome. And I see we also have the comment from Alta. I'm going to pose this, and I'm hoping one of our other colleagues, if they're in a position to address this one, please do so. But Alta is asking, what is happening with the PPE packages, which include masks that needs to be given to participants and are now delayed at customs? What are the steps that we need to take to have these PPE packages released without any delays? So I'm going to allow one of our colleagues to indicate if they're able to respond to that one. But we're going to move along until I see a hand, someone who's willing, who's able to respond to this one. Vicky, are you able to respond to this, or should we pack it?
Yeah, we should pack it. We'll refer to Len. Yeah, Len is our logistic person, and he couldn't attend today because of a family emergency. So we can get back to you with regard to that. Unless if I can actually also maybe try and pick on Sarah if she's able to if she has some information custom related issue. Sarah Cohen, if you would like to comment on that.
Hi, Becky. No, I don't have any additional information at the moment. I am listening. Yeah, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay. It was a question about PEE that is stuck at custom. So yeah, I don't know if you've had any of those kind of issues.
We've had issues with Port Health where we've had consignments stuck at Port Health, and I must say SACRA has assisted us with that. When we've had issues as well. Yeah. So they have a division that we contact. Mainly we work through Momina to assist us. Momina Omaji.
Okay, so we'll get that contact detail. Is it from SACRA? Momina is from SACRA.
Momina's at, yeah, she's at SACRA, yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that the name on the Q&A that we'll send out. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Yes, I agree. Thanks, Sarah. And I want to, yeah, I see we have a few more questions that have come in. Please continue posting. I see Glenda, Judith, I see your questions. And there was one more that I'm going to also get to, but I want to pull Tini back into the conversation, and then we'll switch gears again and go through the questions. So Tini,
Sorry, Raphael, sorry.
Sure, Becky.
Can I ask that we're not only expecting questions from the attendees, we want them to be part of the conversation. Because we don't want to be sharing the SACRA's view or our own personal view. We want you to share your own views as well, not just ask us questions, but let's have a conversation about this topic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think to build onto that, Becky, that even for, I mean, we shared quite a bit today, so there was a lot about the behind the scenes process that we're going through now to get to define the purpose, to come up with a value system for SACRA. So we'd appreciate your comments. You know, if you think the values don't go far enough, it is still a work in progress. So we're not quite done with the process. But if you feel the values that we've put in place they do not go far enough in serving the role of a guiding system, feel free to share. Feel free to share the values you think we should include, or if there are any that you feel we need to remove from the list we shared with you. So we'd appreciate hearing from you. We really are trying to keep it conversational. I'm going to keep moving back and forth with questions between the audience and our panel, but I really hope to hear comments as well, to Vicky's point. So just to go back to Tini. So Tini, you did share a behind the scenes look into everything that we've been going through, all the conversations we've been having, and you know, which also speak to transparency, because we do not want this to be a process that is far removed from our members, that they just find the final output without fully appreciating how that came to be. So I'm also wondering now, in terms of expectations then from our members and even the audience as a whole, we want them to share, but do you mind maybe extending a bit in terms of how we'd like to have more of them involved? Should we open a channel for them to send the emails and the comments in addition? Would you like to see broader participation in this? And I'm also saying this because I know you've been quite involved with a lot of strategy facilitations, such processes before. So what level of engagement would you like to see from our wider audience before we move back to the questions?
Paula, let me be very basic on this. I wouldn't, firstly, let me say, I wouldn't want to see the strategy team to dictate these kind of questions. I would like to see the answers to these questions coming from the subcommittees. For instance, to your question, there's an Info Hub subcommittee. So how would the Info Hub treat your question? Would they create an Info Hub which is like a dialogue where we can just share information, or is it a monologue, we just share information, or will it be a dialogue where they can also share their information? The marketing team, for instance, the subcommittee of marketing, will they do market research in terms of understanding the needs of our members? Will they be doing surveys and questionnaires to understand our audience and our stakeholders better, and then to interact with them? The IT team, or the digital team, would there be interactive, maybe even technology like apps where we can interact with our membership? So we will create the guiding principles. We will get support from EXCO to approve it, and then final support from our total membership. And then it's up to the subcommittees to execute it. I hope that answers your question.
It does, Tini. It does, because I'm also just thinking now what we've been saying about inviting even more people to join the subcommittees, just to also increase the participation, increase the diversity of ideas that's coming in and the number of hands that are involved in it. So definitely addresses it. I want to switch back again to the questions posted. One from Samantha, who's asking, is there a space for nuclear medicine or radiopharmacy in SACRA? Vicky, I'm gonna pack this one with you.
You said the question is from who?
It's from Samantha Duplessis.
Okay, I think there's space for a lot of health-related activities. So Samantha, and from my side, I will invite you to come and share with us what the nuclear medicine and radiopharmacy is about, so that we can see where we can fit it in. You know, so there is space, I'm sure, I'm certain.
All right, and then one that speaks to, sorry, okay, there we go. I was hearing my echo just now. One that speaks to our value proposition. And it's also something that we did spend quite a bit talking around this. Glenda, and Glenda, I hope I'm reading that correctly. Spelled Glenda, but I'm guessing it's Glenda. As a private practice with extensive clinical trial experience, how is our membership relevant to us? So it speaks to relevance as well as the value proposition. In other words, will we be introduced to upcoming trials as a potential clinical trial site? Tini, can do you want to touch on this just a little bit? Just in terms of the value proposition, I do know we still work underway.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, this is a wonderful relevance question. I mean, Glenda, practices like yourself, if we want to make ourselves relevant, then again, I want to go back to the subcommittees to say, what would the Info Hub do to interact with your specific situation, you as a practice, as a practice and a site? How do they include you into that Info Hub? How do they disseminate information that would be beneficial for you? I mean, we really need to continue asking ourselves, what's in it for me? What's in it for we? And more so, what's in it for we? It's about what is in it for we as SACRA, our membership. So I can't give you a more definitive answer, but ultimately I would love to see that the subcommittees really incorporate, they do a stakeholder mapping, they understand all the potential, the small and the big stakeholders, that they reach out through technology or whatever to institutions like yourself as well to interact and give value. Then we'll become relevant. That would make me extremely happy.
I'm muting myself. Thanks for that, Tini. And Glenda, I really hope that addresses your question. I see there's a comment here. I'm not too sure from who the comment is, but I'm just going to... Sure, Vicky?
Can I add to Glenda's question? Because this speaks to your portfolio. So now I want to turn the question back to you, because this speaks to capacity building, and this is your passion, and it's your portfolio. So, I mean, we're still working on SACRA, but what do you say about a new site? What have you thought about when it comes to capacity building? You know, because this is capacity building. I can start by saying that SACRA has a guideline, but there is no implementation plan, you know, and you as a capacity building leader, how do you take a site like the private practice that Glenda is referring to become a participant when it comes to clinical trials?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, good on you for putting me on the spot there. Yeah, and I appreciate the level that Tini addressed it, which was more, you know, what's happening and what we'd like to see behind it. So I'm happy to add to that. I was enjoying my role, you know, being the one asking questions, but good on you for that one. So Glenda, from a capacity building point of view, yes, as Vicky has mentioned, it's a passion area of mine. I feel quite strongly about this one. To importantly make sure that we're broadening the reach of participants on trials, to make sure that it's not, for the lack of a better way, it's not the same people every time, but we continue to bring in new sites, new participants, to make sure that ultimately clinical trials serve the wider country and not a small fraction of the population. So there is a lot of thinking underway. A lot of it has been things that I'm still thinking about and trying to put on paper, but we'll be engaging the subcommittee that's involved in this one very, very soon, just to share the thinking and start building a vision. But I was trying to hold off from sharing a bit too much at this point, but it's a question which within the next month or two, I think the answer to that should be very clear. Because if you have a site that is willing and able to contribute to our industry in some way, the door should be open. And if it means we need to engage even with SACRA to make sure that the requirements are a bit stricter, that we allow more room for new sites to come on board, we'll have the conversation. But it's something which, and I'm more than happy, by the way, if you're also willing to raise your hand to be part of this, because then we will have someone involved in the conversations who can also speak from experience about the challenges that you're facing. So I know I'm not giving you a very clear, straightforward answer. I hope to be able to do so very soon, but I hope that goes some way in giving you a sense of where we're going. And if not, feel free to post a follow-up.
Thank you, Raphael.
All right, sure, Vicky. So I want to go back to our list to our chat function here. There is a comment. I'm not too sure who posted this one. The pillars are great, and I'm guessing this speaks to what Tini shared with us a bit earlier. Our consumers are at site level, either virtual sites or institutional sites. I'm surprised that we don't have support to enhance our participation. We can have the best strategy, but if there are no participants, we are not relevant yet. We need support to have partnership with our patients and sites. And very valuable comment. I'm not sure who shared the comment, but we couldn't agree more. And I mean, if you would have seen on Vicky, I'm not sure if you've had that slide where you show all the various stakeholders that we speak to. I can't remember if you've shared it today. I've seen it so many times.
Oh, yes, our cycle.
Yes.
I don't have it here, but yes, I can post it.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you, given that context, if you'd like to speak to bringing patients on board. I think the site one will definitely deal within the capacity building subcommittee. So do you want to speak broadly to patients? I know you touched on it earlier when you're saying ultimately we're all patients.
Oh, yes.
So I'm not sure if you want to comment here.
Actually, I realized that I do have that slide. It was just hiding somewhere. So I think obviously starting with the, I'm trying to share my screen and the video is just too much here. So this is the SACRA cycle, I mean, we didn't plan to share it today here, but obviously the question starts from the pillars. So at the pillars level, we have Yvette, who's leading the site portfolio, and there's currently no activities from site. And that does not mean that we don't have members from site level. We do have good support from different sites. We still have sites like Dr. Mita's site, Dr. Mita as a principal investigator that still support SACRA. And we have many other sites that are supporting SACRA, but we don't have people that have raised their hands and they are based at site level to contribute to the strategy development and to the new operations for SACRA. But if you look at our SACRA wheel, which is our future engagement strategy, we have looked at stakeholders that we should be interacting with. And you can see there we have patients, as part of stakeholders. We have medical aids as part of stakeholders. We have commercial sponsors, non-commercial sponsors, research, academic research sites, obviously CROs. We have ethics. We want to interact more with local companies that are giving technology infrastructure. I can actually just name one, like Novotech. We have also started an engagement with other technology partners like Blue Cloud. We started a conversation with clinical trials community just to see their different offerings, just that we couldn't cover everything at this meeting. But we want to be engaging with everyone that is here. We have to bring them into our strategy, including the patients. They are very important. And to touch on that, with the upcoming clinical trials day, we need to get to a point where we even have patients telling us their experience when it comes to participating in clinical trials. So yes, I think Rapala, have I answered the question the way you would have liked?
Brilliantly. Very happy with that, Vicky. Thanks for that. So I want to go back to our list of questions here. I see the comments and questions coming in. So just to take one from earlier, this was from Judith, who's saying, there's a question in there, how do we get our scientific community to buy into being part of research to own our data? That speaks to our own healthcare system. So do we still need to rely on data from somewhere else when it comes to decision making for improving our very own health? So this is one of those. I'm also going to have it open for anyone who would like to address this one. And to my fellow panelists, the rest of the team, please feel free to unmute if you'd like to join in.
Rapala, just briefly, I saw that question, but I didn't understand it, unfortunately. I'm not sure. I can't answer it. Apologies.
All right, happy to ask Judith to clarify, but my appreciation of it, and Judith, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, was about, because you're saying very often we rely on data from elsewhere to make decisions about how to improve our very own health. So my understanding of it is that how do we get the wider community to buy into relying on data that we get from here? Instead of having data from elsewhere, can we have a shift? Judith?
Am I now unmuted?
You are now unmuted. Please go ahead.
Most of the time,
Judith?
we don't have South Africa. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you're fading in and out, but I hear you loud and clear now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I do.
Okay. I was saying most of the time, even during the application, when we need to actually indicate what kind of data we have in South Africa, we don't necessarily have our own, and we always have to refer and infer from maybe World Health Organization, which actually would have done studies somewhere else and not necessarily in South Africa. So we are unable to indicate, to show changes from our own data collected here in South Africa. That's why I'm talking about engaging the scientific community so they can play a big role. And we're seeing it now with COVID. And when Vicky mentioned the opportunity, we can see that COVID-19 has made community to understand what clinical trial is all about. The scientific community in academic institutions are very involved. And perhaps this is the time where we need to fully engage them in future data that is needed for decision making going forward. Our medical aids use a lot of data, and we are not sure who are the people that are collecting it. And that's part of research that we are talking about, building capacity, and not necessarily have to wait for sponsors to come up with their own objectives and then we just jump on the bandwagon and do it. So I'm saying let's put our heads together and engage all those necessary stakeholders that are actually have capacity and they have the knowledge to engage in research and real research that will happen in Africa or in South Africa.
Thank you for that question.
Maybe I can respond to that. Okay, sorry, Vicky, go ahead.
No, I think you should go ahead because you did a bit of analysis. Mine will be a different take. I kind of I can mind.
Okay, let me just quickly answer, Vicky. Thanks for that. No, I think that is obviously something to strive for. Listening to you, I see two sets of data which we could address and which we should address. The one, when you talk about medical scheme data, is real-world data, which leads to real-world evidence, and we all know this is a very important part that leads to evidence and evidence generation, even at a regulatory level at this stage. And I fully agree with you. There are big pockets of this real-world data, like claims data, retrospective data, registries, which is not readily available, but would really customize our understanding of the local environment. The other part of data is more prospective data, which is in the clinical trials environment, where the problem that I see is often South Africa is or is not one of the multi-country sites, and typically the design of the trial is not designed and powered to do sub-analysis of a specific country. So one couldn't, for instance, use the South African data to make inferences about or let's call it the external validity of that data in South Africa, because simply the trial design wasn't powered for that. And we often run into that problem as well, where we simply can't do sub-analysis. We have some, let's say, in a 20,000 trial environment, South Africa participated in that 2,000 subjects, then it's simply not powered to use that and to build policy on that, etc.
Yes. My one, it's an easy, it's just a simple one. How do we practicalize science when it comes to health research? I actually shared my video clip at some point and say, we need to get to a point where, like a science graduate, when they finish their junior degree, they're at a level where they can write a protocol. Because I think we should be having science graduates stationed as far as at a clinic at Majosi village, where I come from, basically coming up with data. So that's the kind of health system that we should be able to work towards, just to add into that. Thank you.
Rapala, may I add to that, Vicky? That is, if you allow me, Rapala, can I quickly respond to what Vicky just said?
Yeah, please go for it, Tony.
No, I think, Vicky, that is such a great practical example to answer the question. And to make it even more practical, there was a question from Sam about nuclear medicine and radiopharmacy. And if you look at, and I hope you don't mind, Sam, but if you look at how they have, they've really extended their research into academic institutions to include students in the masters and after that to explore real important research questions for South Africa within the radioisotope radiopharmaceutical industry, and it's an exploding industry for that matter. I think they set a great example of that. That is really a practical way. And Vicky, I love the thing, you know, protocol writing is most likely one of the basic skills that needs to be overcome before you can generate data. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks to the both of you for addressing that one. Judith, I really hope they've done it justice. I see we also have 2 minutes to go before we have to wrap up. So I just want to run through 2 quick comments before we close this off. Samantha asked whether we could share our values and I think the purpose and the value statement. So Tini, I'm going to maybe pack that on with you in terms of at which point are we able to share them now, or is that something we're going to share later as it evolves?
The problem is Sam came in late, so she didn't see it. But Rapala, I would suggest that we actually share it with the membership once we, as a committee, as a subcommittee, have spent a bit more time on that. Sam, to your question, I'll just briefly share with you high-level stuff. It is about being neutral. That's one value, apolitical. it's about being inclusive, it's about being membership centered, it's about being scientific, and there was a fifth one. But those were the 4 or 5 values that we want to use as our true north, and we will further explore that. And then in terms of our purpose, we see SACRA within the bigger South African Economic Society, and we want to work with in this industry to promote South Africa's economy, but seeing the economy as a conduit for the improvement of life and healthcare of patients. And that we really want to build this, we want to play our role to build this industry in South Africa, which would ultimately lead to economic benefits. So we kind of link economic and prosperity, but also link it to the patient and benefits for the patient and access to new technology and new medicines.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Tini. Yeah, I think on that note where you summed up with exactly what we stand for, I want to wrap this up with 5:10 sharp. I want to wrap it up with a comment, a very important comment from Yvette, who says, ultimately, well, participants need to become advocates or ambassadors for clinical trials. And I think that overall speaks to what we all agree. I think as part of even developing a vision for the broader industry, we need to always remember this, that it's ultimately about our participants. And as Becky said earlier, we all participants at the end of the day. So on that note, I want to thank all my participants. Thank you for posing your questions. The ones that we haven't gotten to, we'll try to address in writing to Heben's point earlier. But on that note, Becky, Tini, thank you for joining into the conversation. I'm going to hand back over to Heben.
Thank you very much for facilitating that open discussion, Rapala. I really appreciate it. And I think we've taken some strong pointers from the audience as well that we can implement in a combined vision. And Tini, as well, as your experience in this is tremendous. And Becky, yeah, fantastic chairing as well so far. Okay, then we can continue with the SACRA industry updates and some other points like export permit and survey feedback before we round up this webinar. Becky, your presentation is displayed, so stage is yours.
Yes, okay, so I'll just run through it. It's the industry update, as we usually do at the members meeting, just to give feedback to our members and also non-members on what SACRA has been up to. So this is a busy slide, but you can catch up on it later. So there's new things happening. I don't know, what did I do? Okay, so can you still see my slide?
Yes. We can see the members updates, regulatory.
Okay, so you can see here there is the SACRA Clinical Trials Working Group. So SACRA has come on board and we have signed a TORS with SACRA where we have formed a Clinical Trials Working Group. So we encourage all our members and also future members and non-members, whenever they have challenges with SACRA, they can send it through to us. The reason for the group is not necessarily to take on the challenges, but it's also to create ways of operational efficiency and to look ahead into what is coming when it comes to clinical trials and start working proactively on the guidelines when it comes to clinical trials. For example, the digital conduct of clinical trials, how can we come up and revise the current guidelines to ensure that they are aligned when it comes to those kind of things like e-consenting and all those kind of things. So I'll rush through it. GCP amendment, you've all been waiting for. I mean, the process was started in 2019, and the last update that we got from Clinical Trials Working Group, we were informed that it is at the higher level at the Parliament for sign off, or at the Gazette level, you know, for sign off, and it will be released soon. There's been clinical trials fees published in December 2020. We had comments from some of our members, especially those that are operating and conducting local studies on the fees, that they do have comments on it. And now we have a new document that has been published with regard to the fees for GCP inspections, specifically for us as clinical trials community, though it reflects to others, but we focus on the GCP. The SACRA has provided rationale why those fees, for example, for a visit for a clinical trials inspection, it's charged at 1,600 Rand per hour. That has not changed. What is provided now is just the rationale. If you do have additional comments, this is your time to come back as an applicant, as a site, or as a member of the industry to give your comments. Remote monitoring guideline, I won't touch on it because the SACRA team touched on that. Very important is the SACRA report, operations report. We also published it through SACRA LinkedIn page. What is important is that SACRA is reflected on their goals when it comes to clinical trials, and they noted that their main goal obviously is to evaluate clinical trials sponsored in accordance to defined standards. And their indicator is the percentage of clinical trials evaluated in a specific timeline. They do not state the timeline here, but today I'm glad that they made a declaration that they're working towards a 60-day plan. So I think it answers some of the questions. But what is important is that on the reports, 2019 to 2020, they reflected that they evaluated 140 clinical trials over a target which was set at 126, which is an achievement for SACRA. And also the number of amendments that they evaluated was 980 over that. And they also conducted 55 good clinical practice inspection in the term 2019 and 2020. And then we also have a participation by SACRA at ITG. So it is very important that you as members of SACRA, you keep us informed, you connect with us. Tene reflected on Information Hub. Will it be a monologue or a dialogue? Please share with us whatever your challenge is, not necessarily your challenges, area of improvement, and also where you also want to acknowledge other members of the community. Do share with us. Medical devices, the guideline is still under review. Sarah gave me a good breakdown of this, and there's a new medical device working group that is initiated at ITG. Teresa was in the past part of a working group that reviewed this guideline. So we're asking if we SACRA can still join the ITG working group so that they can represent everything that is happening when it comes to medical devices. Next, key achievement, export permits. I know this is not for others currently, it's a challenge, but we need to reflect where we have done well. In February, Leonard and Ipasa, Leonard from SACRA, they worked on a process on clearing the export permit backlog. In 3 weeks, they were able to clear about 500 permits. I know that some organizations currently are raising comments that the challenge is also coming back. Obviously, there's a current issue with the DOH moving offices, creating a new residual backlog. And we keep on connecting with SACRA in regard to, not SACRA, DOH when it comes to the import and export permit. And Leonard is very key in managing that, and through his relationship also with the DDG and also the Department of Health. I just want to reflect on what we have requested our members to give input and complete a survey when it comes to export permits. I'd like to acknowledge Carol from our EXCO support team who put together this information. So in our data that we collect through SurveyMonkey, we request all the applicants for imports permit and exports permit to complete a survey to highlight the number of permits that they have submitted for application. And in here, we got a summary of 180 that we were managed to track. And as you can see, 42% was import and 57 was export. And going down, you can see that most of those at that particular time were non-COVID, and about 1% was COVID-related permits. And then you can see that a percentage of those permits were new, 65% and more were renewal. So what we're asking you to continue to do is to keep on adding the information relating to the export permits into the SurveyMonkey registry. And I continue to talk about this last aspect of a survey that we ran recently, a stakeholder engagement survey. And I would like to acknowledge Sorika for taking the lead into designing the survey and following up with the number of responses and compiling this report on our behalf. So these are the respondents that we have. We had about 39 respondents, and you can see that if you think about it, we are a broad community. At the SACRA mailing list, we have more than 600 people. So our response rate is very minimal. So we would like to encourage the community to ensure that they respond to this surveys that we continue to conduct. So this is the representative of the industry that responded. You can see we have more percentage from the CRO, and then we have service providers here, and then we have sites here and service providers, and sponsors and NGOs. Yeah, 5% response rate. That is just not good for us if we want to continue and get more information from you guys. So what tangible output would you like SACRA to provide? Most of people, they highlight regulatory support, but I think today has given you a brief background of the extent of what SACRA can do. So we're going to continue running the survey so that maybe you are able to give us more content on what you think SACRA can do, because maybe you had previously not been clear of what more SACRA can do for the industry. And here we ask the people, what value do you currently feel you get as a member? And 59% says it's information update. So we want to be more than just an organization that provide information. And 31% says they are unsure. Hence, it is very important to look at this as SACRA to say, how do we move forward and ensure that we bring value? And this is why we were focusing on at this meeting. And this is very important. I need everybody to go back and complete the survey and distribute the surveys also within your companies or within your different platforms, because many people have reflected that they will prefer our meetings to be between 9 and 12 in the morning. So if we run the survey for another 12 weeks, another 2 weeks, and that the response, the majority says 9 to 12, we may need to have our meetings at that time. And preferred communication, I mean, I was disappointed to see that my LinkedIn posts are not their preferred communication. Emails are mostly preferred, according to our respondents. So we're going to engage more on emails. So don't feel bombarded, but we need to make sure that we keep you informed. And to become a member, you can join SACRA, you can go through to the website. But what is important here is to receive updates from SACRA. Please go in and complete this form in our website. I think the Poppy ad, I think Barbara can touch into this, or Heaven later on, but yes, I'm trying to rush through it. I don't know if there's any comments, or if there's any comments relating especially to export permits, you can address it to us and we'll attend to them later. Heaven, that was my last slide. We're still on time. Let me stop sharing and make a presentation.
Much, Vicky, and I'm sure if people will access LinkedIn and they will follow you with your latest photo that was posted earlier today, we will get much more followers. And furthermore, LinkedIn is just a fantastic platform to actually engage and discuss topics and involve more stakeholders that SACRA usually do not reach. So perhaps it will swing from email to LinkedIn within this year still. Okay, let me just guide you through the last slide before, and I will also start my video again to just give you something more to look at than just slides. Can you confirm that you can see the slides?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Fantastic. Just before I start with the closing of the meeting, I would just like to share a comment that was posted by an anonymous audience member. I think what Vicky said about us as a country being at a point where we need to decide whether we're going to grow or are we going to remain stagnant where we are, or whether we'll go down and go to a lower level is very important. And I believe a webinar like this is a good step to taking clinical research awareness to a higher level. I think we are slowly but surely moving to a higher level with webinars like this. Thank you, SACRA, and thank you, SAPRA. So I think that already underlines really the importance of such webinars and allowing also for sessions where you as an audience can engage, because it's not our opinion, it's everybody's opinion that matters. So thank you very much for your attention, your questions, your interactions, your ideas and suggestions. These ones again just reinforce that we're all thriving as an industry and continuously improving the position of South Africa as a clinical trial landscape. So in line with that comment, we do want to grow and we want to make that happen as a complete team. What I took as two major keynotes is that we all learn from COVID and we will come out stronger and leaner. And of course, SACRA will turn a new page with you involved to realize our vision. I think that is the keynote that I want to take myself and send everybody off with as well, besides all the things. Our next, sorry, now I need to navigate to the slideshow. Our next event will be Thursday, 20 May, to celebrate the progress that we have made in over more than 27 decades. I think, Lind, he actually did not write the clinical trial findings in 1747, but only in 1753. So I'm not too sure about the actual date of that first trial. But we've come far from Lind's citrus fruit, not to be mistaken with Lind's Easter bunnies, to COVID-19 messenger RNA vaccines this year. So lots to celebrate, so watch that space. LinkedIn, email, we will keep you up to date. Then just a quick thank you with the sponsors on screen, and also, of course, still for SAPRA. They have already left the webinar to return to their busy diaries. But a big thank you to SAPRA for taking time and effort to be with us and to interact with us. Then a further huge gratitude from SACRA to our platinum sponsors, BioCare, Merck Research, and Oximio. Then, of course, I can, and I have to, oh, sorry, here is a display of our platinum sponsors. So thank you very much. And then, of course, the opportunities to contact SACRA via Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, with Vicky posting absolute fantastic posts. So get interactive with these. And of course, through email, our auto emailer, and Barbara behind admin at sacraza.com. Then please, if you have not done so already, we would like all to renew or become a SACRA member, because without your membership, we cannot really exist. So please visit the website members page to action this sooner rather than later. And of course, follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Then it really only rests me with wishing you all a happy Easter and a long weekend. Stay safe and healthy. That's it from SACRA at your service. Over and out.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. I'm not too sure how we end this webinar. But thank you all.
Yeah.